a panel discussion on cybersecurity, what you need to know about cybersecurity in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You'll notice that we're going to be having local and regional panelists. This morning, allow me to start with our local panelists. First up, we're going to invite Mr. Apollo Knights to join us here, who serves currently as a director of NTRC. Put your hands together for him. Secondly, we have Mr. Caswallon Duncan, who's the network admin for the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning, Sustainable Development, and Information, Communication, and Technology. Put your hands together for him. And encourage them to come straight to the front where they will sit at the table. Continuing with our other participants, those who are regional panelists, we have first Mr. Stephen Lee, who's the CEO of Architect Inc. and the program director at Carib Knob. Put your hands together for Mr. Stephen Lee. And finally, this morning, acting as a participating moderator, Mr. Albert Daniels, who is a stakeholder engagement and a senior manager at the Caribbean. Put your hands together for our participants on this panel discussion.
Sorry, I'm on the program.
Show you on this way.
Like this. Roxanne, how much time do we have for the panel?
Why are you going first?
20 minutes. Okay. All right. Thanks. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the introduction of our very distinguished panel, which will be primarily looking at this issue of cybersecurity from a local perspective. And of course, we have Stephen Lee, who's as a Caribbean and local man as any of the other two gentlemen at this table, given the work that he's been doing with Caribno. The first thing that I'd like to do is perhaps invite the three panelists, two? Just for the time being? Okay. Okay, so I'll invite the two local panelists to just give a brief 2-minute overview of what they have been seeing with regard to cybersecurity incidents in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Of course, we have Apollo, who is very well known with regard to his work at the NTRC, and I'm sure that our friend from the Ministry of Finance, who's the IT administrator, has, some, I see him looking all excited, giving thought to how much he's going to be sharing with us. But give us a sense of what you've been seeing directly here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Very short before we get into the discussion.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Caswallon, Duncan. Cybersecurity. The world is changing. And in some contexts, faster than in others. When I went to school, I had a computer, I used to wait half an hour to see it boot. I never knew what a cell phone is. We didn't have laptops. Today, our children have everything. Long ago, people used to go to a bank with guns and cutlass, to hold up the bank and rip off the windows. Today, you can be robbed by virtually anyone from anywhere. The information technology landscape is changing very fast. And keeping up with the type of threats and vulnerabilities that we encounter on a daily basis is what I find is even more challenging is keeping our people aware. Keeping our people aware. Now, some of the issues I can talk about openly and some I can't talk about. But we have had incidents where, for instance, our websites have been hacked. We have had incidents where people's emails have been hacked. But we host the government email. We have seen hundreds of millions attempts at brute force at our firewalls, at our email services. We have worked along with the police in solving some of these incidences, or you know. But criminals are smart. I've seen one instance where somebody attempted to break a supermarket. There's a security system there, but the person just in garbage bag from head to foot. So even though you see somebody's robbing, the recognition. Yeah. From a government perspective, government has been doing a lot in terms of training and making resources aware. We have the ICT roadshow, that's championed by the CTU. We have the Girls in ICT. We have a whole bunch of incubator programs and so on that we try to start up and so on about the country and so on. And at the ITSD, with the attempt to bridge the gap between government and the public, putting systems in place to ensure that government is less insular and making the data available out there and so on. We have been doing our own part. Yeah. And we go about we anyway plus industry with whatever cybersecurity incidents that they may encounter.
Okay, so the main point I got from what you've been saying is that the threats exist and the attacks have been taking place. And you gave one or two examples, because I think one of the points of this whole session was to be clear that we are not in this utopian situation where everybody else in bigger countries, in more developed countries, are being attacked. But because of the very nature and the very ease with which international entities can attack our systems, we are in a situation, and to be honest, we have been for many, many years, where we are being attacked at the government level, at private sector level, by persons wishing to gain access to our systems. Apollo, would you like to make a brief comment along those lines?
Yes, good morning. Well, I think we are asking to see for me to mention what I'm seeing. I mean, I'm not in the position like Mr. Duncan, who might be more involved. I'm more like an outsider like you guys, I think. Most of you guys are outsiders. So I'm on the outside looking in. So what I'm seeing is more like what you have been seeing, which includes the ATM scams. I was just seeing this morning on social media and Facebook where they're sentencing for the 3 persons, something maybe soon. That happened already this year, where they was able to hit a number of person accounts right through the ATMs. I mean, we're seeing that.
These are St. Lucia nationals?
Yeah, St. Lucia nationals in St. Vincent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They got converted after they got to St. Vincent, maybe.
Yeah. They came. Remember, we were very close. We share a seaboard, and they came by boat. They not clear our customs now. The criminals don't use our normal systems. They use their own systems. So they came by boat, they clear any custom entries, and they did some work, I think, only this year. Right, I'm also seeing the social hacks, and especially like the social media. I mean, hacking persons' identities, people posting, getting their accounts stolen. That's the common stuff we're seeing. And we've also been seeing the email hacks. I see that all of them are my friends. It haven't happened to me as yet, but maybe as the FBI directors mentioned, I guess it will happen sometime in the future. All right, so I'm seeing where a number of entities now are asking to have better design passwords as compared to the 1, 2, 3 mentioned by Bevel. So now they want you have one with a cap, a number, some letters mixed up, which you have to do. I'm also seeing where some of the banks, they're giving you a little thing on a little chain to press to get some codes that you have to push in when you enter online. So you have like a two-tier identity check. I'm still trying to think of how that works, if the code's already built in or it syncs over time. So I mean, maybe one of those techie guys can tell me how that works. So maybe if the person able to hack all those codes ahead of time, and then you can get into your account. What I also like to touch on is maybe what we're not seeing much of in the islands. So everybody's seeing certain things. What I'm not seeing is that we need not enough education in cybersecurity. So I think we need to do more of that. And I think that's where ISOC SPG comes in. I think they have been doing some of that already in their short existence. And this is part of it as well. And they will continue in that area. I think we also need a national CERT, which is Computer Incident Response Team. And that's where right now persons have a problem and they go to the police. They say the police send you somewhere else. People need to know where to go to when they have these cybersecurity issues. And a CERT plays a big role in that. I think we need to work on that. And I'm also very fearful of what is to come, right, in the future. I don't think things will get any better. They will get worse going forward, especially as we move into things like artificial intelligence. See, instead of persons hacking us, we'll see computers maybe hacking us and doing all kinds of things that we don't imagine in the future. So those are the things that might scare me a little bit. But just to mention, I mean, we've been doing a few things on a local level. From an NTRC standpoint where I work at, we were instrumental in establishing the associate degree program in cybersecurity. Some of the students here today with us, and they're more or less the guinea pigs. They're the first cohort. We graduated, I think, in May. And it's a continuing program, and we hope them that they'll get employment when they finish, or maybe start their own businesses and contribute in the work we have to do together. As we have mentioned, we have to work together both locally and in the region on this great issue. So that's
okay. So the problem is there. The reality that we are hearing is that the problem exists, and we've heard that certain steps are being taken both at the level of the education and at the level of the government to try to address this problem. Just by a show of hands, how many technical people do we have in the audience? Persons who are IT managers, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are a few of them, okay. So in that case, I want to quickly switch to Stephen Lee from CARIBNOG and to tell us a little bit about what CARIBNOG is and specifically what CARIBNOG has been doing in other territories within the Caribbean region to deal with this whole reality of the cyber attacks and the cyber threats.
Right. Thanks, Albert. Right. So CARIBNOG is a Caribbean network community that was formed in 2007 and operates in pretty much the same way as other network operator groups around the world. For example, in the US, we have NANOG. In Latin America, there's LACNOG. In Europe, you have RIPE, and so on. So various regions around the world have what are called network operator groups, which is that coordinate together, work together to help build out technical capacity within the region. And the Caribbean has that in CARIBNOG. And it's been involved over the last 10 years in basically training, education, capacity building through regional meetings and interventions like this. So this event would be joint between ISOC and CARIBNOG and ARIN and so on. So these are the kinds of events in which CARIBNOG would play a part in training and in just helping to connect people together. And security, as I mentioned this morning, has been a pretty major concern of the group over the last few years. It has pretty much always been on the agenda, but recently with the rise of access to technology and cloud computing and AI and so on, the whole issue of cybersecurity has become much more significant. And what we is, while we have focus on legal frameworks and coordination and so on, Caswallon is very interested in training those very technical operators inside a room like this on real hard skills, securing servers and working with firewall rules. We're talking about really practical things that a network administrator or somebody who is responsible for transmission on the mobile network and so on can learn the skills and processes and practical things to make sure that those networks secure. And we're talking about password, multi-factor authentication, the whole gamut of issues related to and preventing attacks, preventing denial of service attacks, different techniques and so on. Apollo just mentioned the CSIRT, and that's a part of the focus of Caswallon. And in fact, I'll be talking about that after lunch. There's the need to have a much better approach to coordinating responses to incidents and protecting ourselves from incidents. Caswallon spoke about helping other departments and so on, and going around and addressing things. And I'm sure I'd bet that a lot of the IT persons here, when they work on their networks, are largely working alone in a highly coordinated way with other departments, with other companies or whatever. That's something that we see a lot across the Caribbean. Really hardworking, technically strong, and so on people. My problem right now, and that's something that we want to see if we can move beyond that and start to have much more coordinated responses to the environment.
Okay, so it's all well and good, to speak generally about the problems of cybersecurity and the impact that it can have and so on. But what I'd like to do now is to drill down a little bit more and sort of bring it home, where we talk for a little while about the impact that perhaps some of these attacks may be having financially here in St. Vincent, maybe. And I'd first like to hear, from Mr. Duncan and Apollo with regard to their sense or any data that they may have with regard to the impact of some of these attacks locally. And then perhaps we can switch quickly to Stephen to hear some of what he is seeing from a sort of outsider looking in the Caribbean region generally. So perhaps, Mr. Duncan, if you can speak a little bit more about the impact, because, we come to this, workshop and we say all these nice things. We talk about structures generally, but what impact have you been seeing that some of these cybersecurity issues has been having locally here in St. Vincent?
Well, in some cases, I can say we have been seriously impacted. Some of the cases I would not be able to talk about because of the sensitivity of the nature of some of these things. But within recent time, we had to deal with an attack at a ministry where we would have lost financially. Suffice to just say that alone, you know what I mean? The other thing is that at the Ministry of Finance some time ago, we had an issue with the shortcut virus. This shortcut virus caused you to lose every single thing, you know what I mean? We run a Zim email system. There have been cases where, for instance, sometimes all 200 users maybe sometimes might get locked out because of whatever, And there's one time we tried to set up this web portal. It was contracted and so on. We had locals working with it and so on. Today we put into production, and the very night of that day, it got hacked. You know what I mean? You see, sometimes people forget that a whole thing is made up of smaller components. And some of the vulnerabilities of the whole thing, depend on the vulnerabilities of the individual pieces. I heard my friend Sian mention a while ago, he said, oh, his thing is secure. I have a philosophy. Things are only secure from the people who don't know. And there's always somebody who knows. My brother here, Stephen, he mentioned about all these things about the advent of cloud computing and things being stored in the cloud. I happen to have done a master's thesis at the University of Liverpool on the impact of cloud computing on the Eastern Caribbean. You see, people normally come in the marketing stuff. They don't really tell you the risk, you know what I mean? In the Caribbean, we have a particular context in that we were colonies and new colonies of another people. And for us to be truly sustainable, we have to find a type of development, banana going out, all this kind of stuff, that develops from within, where we can bring our people to the standard of education and training and expertise, where we can respond to these. You understand me? Everything online. We have our health information system. We have our MPID. We have our taxes online. You get me? Just now we have an e-document management system. We're setting up a public infrastructure and so on. Everything is going online. Now, how do we protect that?
And perhaps maybe that's a good segue to get a comment from Apollo. What I would like to ask Apollo is, how does the regulator look at this kind of evolving situation, this kind of evolving e-society? All in all of this, does the regulator get involved at all? Does the regulator only get involved if the community says to the regulator that they should do something? On all of this?
Well, of course. As a regulator, we're regulated for telecommunications, but we're not the ones who deal with the Cybercrime Act now. The Cybercrime Act came in, I think it was last year. I mean, the best of my knowledge, I think the police is the one who has jurisdiction on the act. So we were not involved from that aspect of it. Now, when issues like content issues, which sometimes have cybersecurity related aspects to it, the Telecom Act as well does not deal with the content stuff. And it's an issue within all the 5 hectare countries. Content more or less is not regulated by anyone. So that is another loophole that we need to look at, right? Touch a little on the experiences from a cybersecurity issue, more or less in detail. As an organization at the NTRC, we, I guess, more or less fall into the one that has not been hit as yet, I think. Well, I said, unless you don't know. I mean, I only had one experience, I think, maybe a few years ago, where at the time, I think, could be cyber related. We had a server that has these, we call RAID drives. You have one RAID drive and second supposed to be redundant now. But they all fail, the server fail and all the drives fail at the same time. So all that stuff went, which to me doesn't seem normal, right? But that was happened at the time. So since then, we have put in more or less different sites so you can reduce that effect maybe happening. Now, Caswallon, as mentioned, he is someone that don't like the cloud, and he thinks there's all kind of bad things in the cloud, which I believe so as well. But I went to a course at the US Telecom Training Institute. They have these one-day courses that are run by different organization entities. And this one dealt with cybercrime issues now, 10 years ago. And the guy who taught the course, he says it was a non-profit organization. Afterwards, I came to the conclusion, I think it was a CIA operation, yeah. So based on the discussions at night, he was one of those guys who hacking Antigua now. Back in the day, Antigua used to do a lot of online gaming. Right. He was a US citizen. He was able to hack into the system and winning a lot of money. Right? And the feds came for him at some point. And then he said he ended up working with the NSA. thereafter. So if you notice that stuff. So then he said he got fed up with the NSA, so he left and formed his non-profit, and then he advises banks and his people how to secure the networks. He doesn't work with credit cards. But from speaking to him, and what he said he can do, and the things he can do, is more or less, it makes you wonder if he can really protect your networks, right? So, yeah, that's what I'm finish up there. So the point I'm coming to is that, well, we can do a lot to protect our networks, and we should do that. We also have to be to the extent of what we put on these networks and information-wise. We need to keep something off and separate machines, not on the net, on networks. And that's the concept we have used at the NTRC. We must an open organization. There's not on our networks that we don't think anyone can see or want to see. And we as an organization use a lot of cloud networks and cloud services. So maybe another secure, but for maybe different branches of government and some institutions, I will advise them maybe yes, not to. Right? So some apps we might use for our organization, we would recommend them to be used maybe for government, for cabinet level stuff. So that's it.
Okay, before I ask for closing comments, I have to latch onto this particular topic of cloud, because we've heard yes cloud, no cloud. Yeah. And the reality is that the cloud seems to be gaining more and more importance in our everyday lives. I mean, I know people would be using Dropbox for certain things. They're using maybe OneDrive for other things. Our email is all in the cloud. There was a time when maybe the local provider used to have all of your email. Now there's a lot of stuff in the cloud. So I know Stephen is a cloud expert. So before I go one by one to just ask for some 30-second closing comments on this local situation, I'll let Stephen talk a little bit about security in the cloud in 45 seconds to a minute.
In 45 seconds. We're not going to get away from the cloud. So, and it improves efficiency and gets a lot more done in today's world than it could without it. So let's accept that we have to use the cloud and then use it with wisdom and with eyes open. There are things that it's perfectly reason to put on the cloud as is. There are things that you encrypt it and you put it on the cloud. You know, there are certain best practices and approaches to engaging in the cloud which can be taught and practiced, which can make use of the cloud not as dangerous as it potentially could be if we do it in a more ignorant manner. So.
Okay, so I'll just finally ask each of the panelists to make a sort of closing comment with regard to individual attitudes to cybersecurity. Again, Apollo, Mr. Duncan, based on what you've been seeing in St. Vincent, is there anything that you would like to say with regard to attitudes to cybersecurity in St. Vincent? And of course, Stephen, from a Caribbean perspective, I'll ask you to close off after we've heard from Apollo and Mr. Duncan with regard to this whole issue of attitudes towards cybersecurity. Let's start with Apollo, and then we'll go to Mr.
Well,
yes, just to close, I'm saying the social aspect is very important in terms of passwords that is used for different services. Everything on the net now wants a password. So try to use strong passwords. Also, be careful on what you take on your phones, these pictures and so forth. Careful on what you store on them. As if you lose a phone, you can break into it. So just be careful in what you put on a device. So don't think it's secure and nobody can touch it. Have the mindset that you can lose it and somebody can get it at some point in time. So just keep that thought in mind, and I think that will help you a lot in cyberspace.
I think generally we have a false sense of what security really is. And the weakest part of any security system are the people. You understand? The people. And a young lady generally would not show me her leg, but she would go on Facebook and put it there. You know what I mean? You get me? And so we need to have some serious awareness programs. I look at what is happening here right now. For instance, I wish some senior members of government were here at this thing, because at the end of the day, these are the people who make the big decisions. You get me? There's a bridge between the technocrat and the bureaucrat, in the sense that we know what all the problems, we know what the solution is, but feeding it upward to get the solution to come back down. is a problem because they don't understand the issues. Sometimes I put a system in place to secure, unless for instance you have a firewall and you shun in packages and so on. But John Harry, he gets blocked. His thing has been shown, he gets blocked from the internet. He complains, so I can't do my work. I'm saying to you, so something is wrong with the way you're using your computer and your browsing and so on. You get me? Eventually, you say, okay, well, take me off that. Let me go free. You understand me? And if you have one broken window in this room, it's a problem for everybody in this room. You understand me? An open session is an open door. You get me? A vulnerability in any part of this network that is interconnected via a fiber optic network, whether it be on the copper network, once it interlinks, you get me? You can scale your permissions, what have you, and you can attack whatever. So I think making our people aware is very, very important, and putting policies in place. Because your operating system and everybody operates in isolation, and there's no policy that governs the way we use things, the way we approach things. You get me? We have a problem. I have what I tend to think, in the absence of balance, there's chaos. One. If you make something too secure, nobody can use it. At the same time, if you make it free for all, it's no good. You get me? So we need to approach it with critical balance. You understand? It's usable, but it is somewhat secure. You understand? And we adapt, because nothing is built in stone. I just attended a World Bank meeting where they tried to push something on our throat, and I was very angry then. You know what I mean? Don't tell me something is secure. Tell me it is unlikely, because something that was impossible 10 years ago is possible today. And something that is possible now will be possible tomorrow, because we learn, we adapt. The only time we will not adapt is when we are dead. And that's what I have to say on that.
Stephen?
What he said. Yeah, so just very short comment that the to share and build up on things that individual ones of us know and leverage it for the community, the better our chances will be to improve over time. So we need to keep doing this.
Okay, so what I think we should have gotten out of this is that, yes, we live on a beautiful Caribbean island, beautiful Grenadines, but the cyber threat is real. It is present, and we've heard some specific examples of the impact that it can actually have. But at the same time, we are in a situation where we need to realize that we need to approach the usage of the new tools that are available to us with balance. We need to pay attention to legislation. We need to pay attention to our attitudes, and there is a lot of work to be done. We are not in a utopia. We are in a very serious situation, but at the same time, we have to go on with our lives. So ladies and gentlemen, I think, it was a short, but it was a very interesting discussion. So I'd like you to thank our three panelists, Apollo, Stephen, and Mr. Duncan. And I now hand back over to our Master of Ceremonies.
Thank you very much. Put your hands together once again for them. Mr. Duncan sure did add a little flair to his closing remarks. I love it. What people won't normally do in real life, they go on the internet, believing that there's some sort of security there, when the reality is that they're just setting up themselves for disaster. Before we break for lunch, I'd like to formally invite everyone who is present and those who are following via the World Wide Web of the Internet Society's official launch this evening at the Flow Wine Bar that's just across the street there, upstairs Subway. All right, we're gonna be there from 7:30 p.m. to about 9:30. All right, so the Internet Society St Vincent and Grenadines chapter, we're gonna be having our official launch tonight. Shall I invite you all to stand? I'm just gonna whisper a little blessing on the meal, and then we go downstairs and partake. And we wanna return here for 20 minutes after 1, where we will go into our next presentation. Let's allow me to briefly offer a word of blessing on the meal. Lord, we thank you for an awesome morning where we discuss how vulnerable we are or we can be. Now we pray as we go to lunch, that you can bless it, help it to nourish our bodies. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you very much. Oh, by the way, we have invitations at the back, all right? So if you need to get your invitation to that event tonight, because I believe security is usually tight at flow.